Are we live?
Yes, hello. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And please bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. Anika and I are very excited to be here, but it is our first webinar, and we've already had some technical issues. So just please bear with us. Do you want me to start with talking about the Las Musas?
Sure.
Or should we introduce ourselves first? Do you want to introduce yourself first, or whatever you want?
Sure, introduce yourself first.
Okay. Hi, I'm Reina Luz Alegre. I am the author of the Dreamweaver, which comes out very soon, June 23rd, from Simon & Schuster Kids. Yay! It is a contemporary MG about a 12-year-old girl named Zoe who has moved around a lot her whole life, and she has never really felt like she fits in, but for the first time, her dad drops her off at her grandpa's house for the summer, and she makes a great group of friends and things are starting to click, but she discovers that her grandpa is in danger of losing his business, a beachside bowling alley that's been in their family for decades, and so she makes it her mission to try to help save the business for him.
And it's a great book.
Oh,
my daughter and I loved it.
Oh, thank you so much. I love yours too.
Thank you. My name is Anika Fajardo, and I'm the author of What If a Fish, which is also from Simon & Schuster, and it's coming out August 11th. So you can pre-order it. I've got a little ways to go still. And What If a Fish is about an 11-year-old boy named Eddie who is his father has died, and he's kind of trying to connect to his dad's side. His dad was Colombian, and kind of figuring out who he is and how does he fit into his world in Minnesota. And he ends up going back to Colombia with his older half brother and kind of figuring out where he belongs and who he is, and trying to win a fishing contest at the same time. So there are some missing parents, some interesting parents. Do you want to introduce our host for the webinar?
Yes, we are. Anika and I are part of Las Musas, which is a group of Latinx writers who write children's books. And we are a big network who had debuts in 2020, 2019, 2018, I believe, upcoming in 2021, 2022. We're very fortunate to have a wonderful group of madrinas, of mentors as well. And they are our hosts for this webinar. So thank you so much, Las Musas.
Yay, from Las Musas. And if you want to find Las Musas books, you can go to lasmusasbooks.com, and we have all of the Musas and books, and also all the different webinars that different Musas are doing on all different topics about writing. I kind of writing for all different kinds of writing. So hopefully you'll find something. They're all going to be they're all recorded and then available for free.
Yes. I believe they're all on YouTube. I think this one will be on YouTube.
This one will be on YouTube. Yep. Yep. I mean, assuming we can figure out all the technology.
Yes.
We're going pretty good so far.
Yes, I can see you. It's exciting.
It is exciting. And we can see that there's people attending. Yes. So please feel free to drop any questions you have into the chat box. That is what we understand how to do, I think. So we're going to talk about, the reason that we wanted to talk about parents in middle grade fiction is that, or the lack thereof of parents, is because when I was reading Reina's book, I realized the mother in the book has died, and the father in my book has died also. And there's sort of this kind of, I mean, I feel like that's a really common theme in middle grade fiction where you have one or both parents missing. So, I mean, there's a long history. So this is not new at all. I feel like they're like classic literature, like The Secret Garden, Little Women, Anne of Green Gables. There's all these classic Dickens. There's all these books where the parents are missing, or the story is really about orphans. I was a big fan. I was just telling Reina that I was a big fan of Pippi Longstocking because her friend, Pippi's friend, is named Annika, and it was the only Annika I knew in my childhood. Another Another book is See You in the Cosmos by Jack Cheng, which I just absolutely adore. And in this one, the father is missing. He thinks he's dead. There's a little bit of a mystery about the father. And then the mother is mentally ill and isn't really like, she's physically there, but not emotionally, mentally there for him. And Summer of the Mariposas by Guadalupe Garcia McCall. It has sisters who have their father is gone, and they're trying to make their way. They have a journey, Odysseus journey. And I was just thinking about, this is an old one, The Great Gilly Hopkins, which is kind of, so it's quite old, but it's about a girl in the foster system. So another one where the parents are missing, and she builds a bond with a foster parent instead of with an actual parent. So there's, so many books that have kids without parents in some way. Like, even I was thinking about the Charlie Brown cartoons. So when you watch the Charlie Brown Christmas, and the parents are like, rah, 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 rah.
That's such a good point. They are. You're like, it's like, not only are they barely there, when they are there, like, what they say is so clearly not relevant.
No,
like, we don't even
cares
know what they're saying. It's just all like muffled. That's true.
Yeah.
I think it's like, in part, to give a plot device, like, to some extent, because it does sort of like, if the parents are missing for any reason, even if they're just at work or something, then you have a lot more flexibility for the main character, especially when they're a kid, to sort of go on an adventure or try to save the world without any regard for like asking mom or dad for permission, especially in middle grade, where like my book is for ages 8 to 12, so like an 8-year-old, I imagine, is much less likely. I mean, of course, there are all different experiences, and there need to be books for all different experiences. Some kids have their parents, like helicopter parents, monitoring everything. Some kids, sometimes just because their parents want to encourage independence, sometimes because they have challenging circumstances. For whatever reason, they might not have parents or parental figures around as much, but generally, an 8-year-old would be expected to have less independence than, say, a 12-year-old would be, to like go off and even just like hang out with friends independently. Or, I mean, it would all sort of depend on so many different factors, like where they live and what their family situation is like, and where the friends are, and if it's like a driving town or a town with good public transportation, or even available public transportation. And so there would be a lot of different factors. But one thing that I actually really love about Annika's book is the mom who is around, and she's, I don't know, she just took my heart. She was such a good mom, and so loving and so caring and so present. I love that she's actually very present in little Eddie's life, and she's texting him like, "Are you safe? Are you okay?" She was there. But I love that. I don't want to give away anything like a big spoiler, but I love that for reasons Eddie is separated from her for a bit, and he has a lot like he's has sort of that independent journey, but like we're still in touch with mom. It's not like a complete mom just isn't referenced for 3 months, or it's not 3 months long, but for just a while, which I feel like happens sometimes in books, where it's just like, oh, whatever, we don't even need to check in with mom and dad. We just assume that happened, and we didn't need to put it in the story. But here she's like texting him like, hey, how you doing? Miss you. So I thought that was so realistic, and also like heartwarming, and like really grounds the character in reality, for readers. So I love that.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of the times the missing parent, or missing, whether they're like actually missing or just not in the story very much, is that really forces the character to grow really fast, and you kind of need that fast growth in order to maintain that narrative arc in the book. And so if you can't depend on your mom or dad to help you with something, you've got to quick do it. You've got to figure it out yourself. And I think like for Zoe, and you're in the Dreamweaver, she really has to make a choice about her father. I mean, he comes back, but she's making, I also will not spoil anything, but but she has to really do some maturing and kind of some soul searching and kind of looking out for herself. I think that I think is true with any books where there's a missing parent. I mean, like in See You in the Cosmos, and See You in the Cosmos, because the parent in that book the mom is mentally unstable, and kind of that's her unstableness is kind of what kicks off the story, that he really has to figure out how to reach out and find other adults or older, like there's an older brother in that story. And so he has to figure out, how can I find other people to help me out? And I think Zoe does that too in your book. And in See You in the Cosmos, he really needs to realize that he can't depend on his mom. And I see we have a question from Joan. I wrote a middle grade with a girl who has leukemia and her parents are getting divorced. Her mother tunes out because she can't handle anything but her job. Would this be inappropriate for a middle grade book? And I think, like, for those same reasons that I was just saying, like, it helps the character grow, and also that's a realistic expression of what happens in kids' experience. Like, that is something that happens, right? And the interesting thing is how then the kid responds to that loss of the parent, whether it's physical or mental.
I think, yeah, I know, I completely agree with you. Like, I think it's so important. I don't think every book has to reflect every kid's experience, but I think that all kids should be able to find a book or a few books that they can relate to. So books should have like this broad range of experiences. And that scenario that Joan is describing sounds very realistic and hard. And so, I mean, I personally think it would be a very interesting story, and also like an important one to show that perspective. I think it's important to show in writing that characters aren't perfect and parents aren't perfect. And I think middle grade is especially kind of like a great genre to really explore that in, because kids are in real life starting to branch off from their parents, and they're starting to like reevaluate everything they've been taught, everything they've been told. Now they're like, it's not just like adolescent stuff like, oh, I want to hang out with my friends, I don't want to clean my room or do whatever my parents are saying. Like, they're also challenging all the beliefs that they've been raised with, and like the impressions that they've had of their relatives, which are also so based, I think, in like how the parents or relatives who have raised them view other people. And so, like, in my book, in the Dreamweaver, Zoe has always stuck up for her father, and that's the beginning of the book. She's like whatever her dad says goes, because he is the surviving parent. I think that happens a lot when you have a single parent, that like as a kid you just like I need this one to like stick around. So like whatever they say or do, okay, like I'm gonna go along with it because I don't have a lot of choice. But her older brother is older. He was older when their mom passed away, and so he feels a lot more angry and a lot more comfortable challenging their dad regularly. And then Zoe starts to, when dad, in my book, dad has jumped from job to job across the country, and so he's just always like picked up and followed him. But then this summer he decides that he's actually going to move without her, and so that very much hurts her feelings. Like, well, you don't want to take me with you, what? And he leaves her with her mom's dad, her grandpa. But it also makes her start to look at his past like behavior and all of his moving around like with a more critical eye. Like, she starts to relate more to how her brothers always viewed her dad. So like I don't know, I just think it's interesting. I think nuanced characters, that parents are not, perfect. No parent is perfect. And so I think it's interesting.
And I think that it's really important, like developmentally at that age, that 8 to 12 age, is that they're starting, it's becoming developmentally appropriate for kids to kind of have their own set of people. And, some kids are more or less reluctant to do that. And having in fiction, if you have the parent, if you force your character to not be able to rely on their parents for things, it kind of gives an example for kids, even who do have parents around to help them, that, there's other ways of doing things. And then they're forced to also forge relationships with other people, which is really important at that age also, after they're kind of, they've established in their families, and who can they trust, and then they're starting to develop these relationships that will, as they become teenagers, then that's that is their whole life, right? But there's kind of weird transition there where you almost like it helps, and I think that's one of I don't know, but I think that's one of the reasons there's so many parents missing in this age range, because it forces those characters to kind of figure that out and find other ways to get validation what they need that isn't necessarily mom or dad.
I agree. I also, one thing I love about your book and about a lot of more contemporary books is that the absence is explained. Like when the parent's not there, it's explained. I feel like in some of the books I grew up reading, like they just didn't like check in, or it was supposed to happen off the page. I don't know. It was just like, cool. Like parents are just not around. And I also felt like there was a fair number of seemingly perfect parents. Well, and to the extent that they were around, they were just like, they never had a clue what was going on, which I guess is an imperfection, but they were like very just like loving and, you know, just seemed to be right in what they were thinking. And I don't know, like they just weren't really developed, you know, like.
Yeah. And I think it makes it harder for the character to break away or to make that feel realistic if the parents are really great and really, fun to be with, because they are going to have to, kind of go against somebody that on the page is looking like pretty great. Like, why wouldn't you want to do everything this great mom says? And so it kind of, we have to almost create this artificial kind of tension, I think, in those relationships.
It's true. Which actually, would you like to talk about writing parent characters?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, do you want me to start, or do you want to start?
Go ahead. You start.
So I made some very, very high tech props. Here we are. Feelings. That's how I started. Can I even get it on the screen? So for me, writing has always been a lot, like a starting point about, my starting point has always been feelings. Like when I was a kid, it was a place to just vent. And as I grew older, in reading, but also in writing, the most interesting part to me about a book is always like, how do the characters feel about each other? What's their emotional range? What are they going through? So I sort of start with, like what are the feelings that everyone has toward each other. So it goes both ways. Like what are characters, the main character in middle grade, of course, is usually the child. So like what are the kids' feelings about all the parental figures in their life? So I kept it like in my head when I was writing the Dreamweaver, but I made like sort of a little sample chart. And I sometimes make charts. So like, you can see my second very high-tech prop. This is Zoe's feeling chart toward her parental figures. So, like when we start the book, before the book even happens, for her father, she just loves him like unconditionally, will follow along with anything that he wants. With her poppy, her grandpa, she loves him in that sort of like distant general way that you love grandparents you don't see very much, but she doesn't really like know him. Like she hasn't even connected with her Cuban heritage. Her mom was Cuban and her mom's family is Cuban, but she hasn't even thought about that very much in years because her dad had put away all her mom's stuff because it was too painful for him to look at. So she's just sort of like generally aware that she should feel affectionate, toward her grandparents. And then Jose, her brother, is like her idol, which he's sort of the surrogate parent when her dad's not up to it. And so she loves him, she respects him, she looks up to him. And then in the very beginning of the book, with dad, especially when he drops her off at Poppy's house and doesn't intend to bring her with him to his new job, she's starting to get mad. Her feelings are evolving toward Poppy also because she's now like feeling closer to him and she's getting to know him better. And then with Jose, her feelings are also evolving because she's like really scared about him leaving her for college, especially with that also leaving her. She feels like everyone is leaving her. So like Zoe's emotional arc or her feelings toward every character sort of evolve over the entire course of the story and throughout the middle of the book and the end of the book. And then so I sort of made my third very high-tech prop.
That's beautiful. It's very artistic.
This little middle grade main character. And I feel like middle grade, like we've talked about, is such a conflicted time where at least I'm just remembering myself in middle school. Like on one hand, I felt like I could do everything and anything myself, but then on the other hand, I don't know if I acknowledged it expressly, but like, I couldn't pay my own bills, or I needed, I might wanted help with my homework, or I definitely needed someone to give me a ride to take me anywhere. I couldn't, drive or like really get anywhere by myself. And but then also as a middle schooler, and Zoe certainly in the Dreamweaver, and also I don't want to give it away, but I feel like in your book also little Eddie, he's so sweet and resourceful. I love him. He is just like the best, coolest kid. Like I love him. Like these kids at that age also feel like I am going to now help my parents. I've got it. Like I can fill in where they can't, because they start to feel so independent. And then I have a whole thing about the parents' feelings, but I'll I'll turn it over so I'm not just like babbling on. Babbling on.
What's interesting, because both of Zoe's parents are one has passed away, but the other one is kind of not really in the picture so much. So in my book, the father has died, and so he kind of takes on this kind of larger than life. He's died long enough ago that he's just, everyone only remembers the good things, that kind of thing, where he's sort of this, guy on a pedestal that is this amazing person, even though little Eddie was 5 when he died, so he doesn't have a huge amount of memories of him, but it's sort of like the idea of a father. Whereas then his mom is still really, like you said, she's still really involved in his life. But she's kind of got her own stuff going on, and she's got a brand new job. And so she has other things, but I think she also is kind of trying to let him be independent to a certain extent, although like she is annoying. Like she makes him wear a life jacket at the dock, and it's super annoying. But then she also has this 19-year-old stepson. And I wanted to kind of have that relationship also be a parent-child, even though he's first of all, stepson, and second of all, a much older kid, an adult almost. But I think it's important for kids to see that even when you get older, you still have a parent, and like your parents are still your parent, even when you're older. And so I wanted to have kind of that contrast between, how a mom is, like your mom is a mom, right? No matter what. And then Eddie gets to know his half-brother's grandmother. And so, somebody's asking about grandparents. Yeah, so I have a grandmother. Abuela is not actually Eddie's blood grandmother, but he develops this relationship to her. And I think that it's really common to find grandparents also in middle grade fiction, or aunts or uncles, or something like a different kind of parent figure. And so I think that allows them to have a different relationship with an adult in their life. And I do think it's important. I think it's really good to show adults in kids' books, because it's important for kids to have adult role models, or just someone safe they can go to if it's not a parent. And I think that abuelas are going to be a lot more forgiving of any issues. Like they don't have to raise them, right? They don't have to like tell them to brush their teeth. Like there's just this different relationship between a grandparent or like this other adult and a kid.
I think it's so true. And actually, when you're saying like mom was lame for making him wear a life jacket, I was like so on board with like, yes, you need to wear a life jacket. And I'm like in mom mode. Like, no, you listen to mom. But yeah, grandparents can definitely be like so much more indulgent. And I love the extended family, and that like family. I mean, I guess he does have a blood connection to Abuela, because it's not a direct blood connection, but it's like his half brother is like the link between them. But I love that defining family so broadly, and like including like I think he just calls her Abuela, doesn't he? In the book, like she says Abuela too. And also, I really admired the characters in your book who have like they suffered so much. The adults who do remember the dad, and also the Abuela who had also lost Oh, sorry, am I saying
Her
or
daughter,
revealing too much?
No.
I don't want to reveal too
No,
much,
it's
but
okay.
but they still found it in their heart, to survive it and to open up to new relationships. And like Abuela seems like she really loves, her son-in-law's new wife and his son. Like that's, I thought that was just so beautiful, and like the way that they are, I don't know, just like they've suffered and they've had so much grief and sadness, but they've also survived, and they've like found new loving relationships. And I thought that was really beautiful. And
I don't do. I mean, I kind of think that is. I don't know. Maybe it's sort of a reflection of like the Latin American culture of really valuing. Well, first of all, really valuing children. I think, at least in my experience in my family in Colombia, this sort of like just the children are just so important, and that anyone who gathers around you, those are the people that you love, and those are your family, and the more family, the better.
yeah.
So I just could like see Abuela. She kind of is both after my own grandmother, my own Minnesotan grandmother, who actually died while I was writing this book. And then my aunt. It was just kind of a combination of those two women, and just like their great lovingness and also their expression of love. I think that grandparents can do like the hugging past the age when the kids don't want to hug their parents anymore. Like they have like that extra permission, I think, which I just love.
Definitely. No, they definitely do. I think that it's, I don't know, I love grandchildren relationships, because there is that sort of softness that isn't always present in like the parental relationship, because the parents have to be the ones who are doing the bulk of the raising and really laying down the rules. And but in the Dreamweaver, the grandpa is still, his daughter's death happened a few years previous, but he's still like he hasn't really moved on. Like he's actually sort of he was alone, and he's sort of let everything around him kind of fall apart. And so he wasn't near his family, and so he's pretty angry at his son-in-law, and he hasn't like really moved on from it yet. But Zoe and him, they sort of form this deeper bond now that she's living with him, and I think they help each other heal and like move forward a little bit more together, which was like I cried during some of the scenes myself as I was writing it.
Well, I think both Zoe's grandfather and Zoe's father both have dealt with their grief by burying it, and Zoe really forces them to unbury it. Dig it up? I don't know.
No, you're right. You're right. She does.
Almost that innocence of the child view of like, let's look for the good. Let's not, just because there's some pain, let's not take everything away just because some of that is painful. And I think little Eddie's older brother also has that kind of going on too, just to some extent. And actually the mom too, where they just want to kind of pretend their pain doesn't exist. Whereas the kids are like, hey, tell me about these people, or let's keep talking about my grandmother and my mother, because I want to know more.
It's true. They're like so sweet and curious, but like also like it's almost like they have no choice but to hope. Like it's just like an instinct. Like they want to know more, and they want to like, it's like they want to go back in the past and learn more, but they're also, unlike the adults, not as like mired in it. Like they're still sort of like instinctively more hopeful and open to the future. Like in Zoe's case, like she sees that her grandpa's about to lose his bowling alley, and she's like, Grandpa, like you need to do something. And he's
right, like, she's forward, she's future thinking, right? She's looking to the future. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and little Eddie is too. I love that he's also trying to help us. And then I also love, I won't give away the ending, but I love the ending. It was really good ending. I love how it all comes full circle with Big Eddie. I have a question. Yeah. What made you decide to name both brothers Eddie?
Oh my gosh. Well, so when I was 25, I found out that I had a half brother. And so my half brother is actually the same age as me. So instead of the big age difference in my characters, but my brother, my dad, my nephew, my cousin, and my uncle all had the same name. And so they have the same name. And so I realized that if I would have been born a boy, I might have had the same name as my brother. So that's where it all got started. Because I thought, well, of course, if I had been a boy, my dad would have named me after him, which is what he did with my brother. So that's where I got started. I was just like, actually, that was the seed for the whole thing. Is like, what if you had a sibling that had your same name? Like, how do you identify yourself then? Like, how do you differentiate yourself in your family and for yourself, and especially if your brother is really different than you? I love playing with names.
Me too. I like names too. And I love that. I love how the name sort of became, I won't give it away, but like how the name or becomes part of his journey too. Like by the end when I won't it's hard to talk about a book without giving away all the good stuff.
I know it is.
But I like how that evolves also over over the course of the book.
Well, so Reina, I don't know if you had a chance to read this article that I sent you. So I used to be a librarian, so I did a little research before our talk, and I found this article from School Library Journal from 1989. Okay, 1989. I mean, just think about that for a second. And it was super judgmental about books that have parents missing in either divorces or whatever. And that this author of this article, 1989, was like, you should have full families so that everyone can see an example of what a wholesome, two-parent family looks like. And I feel like we are not facing that. I mean, you didn't get any pushback for having a non-traditional family.
I mean, this is life. I mean, like there are traditional families, or I don't even like. I mean, just nuclear, or like there's mom, dad, kids families, but there's like all different kinds of families.
Yeah,
so, Like I
I think we're really lucky to not be in that stage where people are going to say, "Well, you have parents with, you killed off one of the parents. This is not wholesome." And I think that I think it's good for, I grew up with a single mom. And so it's really important to me to see stories about families that have one parent. But also, I think even for a lot of kids who have two parents, maybe one works a lot, or maybe, or let's say if you're an immigrant family and one of the parents is still in your home country. So you have both parents, which is not there. And I think there's lots of ways where you will end up without two parents present at all times. In fact, I don't know, maybe that's what's rare now, is both parents around.
I have to think about it. I feel like there's everything. Like,
there's a little bit of everything.
There's a lot. I mean, we still need more, but I agree that I don't think the 1980s stigma hopefully doesn't, or I haven't read widely enough to find it. But I've read like a lot of books with different configurations of what family means, like everything. I mean, grandparents, sometimes adoptive parents, or like parental figures who aren't necessarily parents but are the big mentor in the kid's life, or two moms or two dads, or a stepmom or a stepdad, or uncles and aunts. I mean, there's all different configurations. Like, so I think that's so important to show. And actually, for writing parents or parental figures, I have another very high-tech prompt. I don't know if this is a good time.
We like your prompt. Oh, we want to see them.
But so for writing parents characters, I always like to think about feelings. So I have is this a mirror image? So
no, it works. No, we can see it.
Oh, okay. No, what are parents feeling? So when I'm writing the parents in a kid's book, I try to keep in mind three things. Like, what do I think their real feelings are? What do I think that the kid is perceiving as the parents' feelings? Are they like having a miscommunication? Is the kid only kind of like interpreting half the story just because they're a kid and they don't really understand why their parents being like so unfair, or whatever it is? And then how do the parents' feelings change and evolve over time, which in the Dreamweaver was a big emotional arc for both the grandpa character who goes from kind of like being like stuck in his rut and not, I don't know, not having any kind of answer really for like what his plan. He didn't have a plan. He was just sort of sad and trying to keep it together and put up a front until his grandkids move in. And the dad, who is just like marching to the beat of his own drummer and not really being all that responsible and kind of like justifying terrible decisions to himself because he thinks that he's like this young dreamer who can't you know, conform or be traditional or be expected to give up whatever his dream of the day is. And so, but then it takes not his son, who's always pointing out his shortcomings to him to the point where I think he's like just like droned it out and just written him off as a teenager, but it takes like his little daughter who is like the apple of his eye and who's finally not just like, in Spanish you say like I forgot the phrase, like following his current, I don't know, like siguiéndole la I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it correctly. Like she's just not like going along with everything that he says. She's like, wait a second, this is a bad idea. I don't, you know. She starts to challenge him, and then he starts to like really evaluate himself. So, and then whenever I write any character, but especially parents and kids, I'm always big on feelings. My low tech prof.
I love it. And you know, that totally comes out in the Dreamweaver, like that each of the characters, like the feelings that they're going through is really like in the front and center, I think. So I can tell, it's interesting to hear that you purposefully do that, because I think that I do it more like in the background.
No, you could feel it though. Like I thought it was really well done. I actually loved the brothers' emotional arc a lot, and I thought it was so realistically and like well done, where he is like a teenager, you know, like he's kind of like a kid too, a much older kid, maybe legally not a kid anymore. Was he like 19 or?
He's 19, yeah.
19. So he's, I mean, but he's still like, and I love the way that Eddie's mom, little Eddie's mom, still like feels like now he's her son and she needs to take care of him.
Yeah.
Like, but he's like, he has a wide range of like some things he does feel like very much what a teenager, a 19-year-old kid is going to do. And then like some other things are just so mature beyond his years because of, I think, everything that he's, you know, suffered and gone through and like what's going on with his, you know, all the grief that he carries. And then the way that he sort of processes his grief also, that felt so like real. But I love his relationship with his little brother. They're so, it was just very, very sweet, and it felt very, very realistic.
Yeah, I like the idea of sort of like playing, it's almost like a parent role, but not really, like this sort of different, you've got somebody who's there for you, but unlike a parent, like, first of all, like he's not gonna so much boss him around. I mean, he does boss him around a little bit, but he also isn't going to be like, yeah, whatever you say, like your best friend is going to do, like everything you do is fabulous, you know. I mean, it's a different relationship than you have with your best friend. And yeah, I think, you know, when we have depending on what the parents are, I think they can play different roles. Like I feel like the mom and the abuela are sort of more constant in terms of like how they interact with the kid, and so they're kind of like this constant. And I think in your book, the adults are going through a lot more like change emotionally, and it's almost like Zoe is just like evenly kind of growing and growing. Well, she has her moments.
She's like by nature pretty like even keel. Like
yeah, she's even keel. Yeah,
she's the peacemaker. She's like, she tries like in Spanish, I don't know if this is, I never know if something is just a Cuban phrase or a general Spanish phrase, but a phrase I grew up hearing was que le viene todo bien. Like everything, like everything comes good to her. Like she just goes with the flow. She's like, she doesn't want to rock the boat. She just wants everyone around. Like her first thought is usually about everyone else, and then she starts to realize, wait, what about me? Like, what am I gonna do? So she starts to like find her own voice, and it's sort of happening. It's like happening because of everything that's going on with everyone else. Like everyone's on their journey individually, but also like together.
Yeah.
when you write your characters, do you start out with like a fully fleshed idea of like, did you have a good sense of like, this is Eddie's mom, this is who the abuela is, this is, or does it like develop over time as you're writing?
I think I have a pretty good sense of the characters, like innately. One of the things that I thought was interesting, and it's interesting you actually brought up the texting to the of the mom while he's on his trip, is that my editor and my agent both kind of wanted a little bit more. They kind of pushed on those things to say like, hey, a mom would be like, like, is a mom gonna send your 11-year-old off to a foreign country by himself? Whereas like I was just like, yes, because he wants to go, so he should be able to go. And I think, I mean,
You're
what I
the
like,
fun mom.
yeah, what I like about contemporary fiction is that like you do kind of have to work within the confines of reality.
Yeah.
And sometimes as a writer, you just want to like make them, like, you're like, I'm in charge. I get to say what they're going to do. But so I think it was really good, like a really good challenge for me to think about, okay, logically, like in the real world, how would this work? She's gonna have to get him a phone. She's gonna have to get him an international plan. I mean, she can't just let him off, or else her character changes, right? Then all of a sudden she's not a very reliable mother if she's not checking in with him. And so I think I really like constraints when I'm writing, so that, because otherwise I'll just kind of go all over the place. So any kind of real or artificial constraint I can put on myself, on my characters, really helps me develop who they are and how they're going to proceed through the story.
I love it because it makes it feel like, it makes me connect like with the characters more. Like I'm like, oh, okay, like he's gonna be calling her, like okay, she's texting him. Like it makes it feel more real. Like again, like I don't want to like mention specific examples, and like I don't, because like I liked other parts of the books, but some books growing up, I was like oh, it was just like a recurrent theme in a lot of books where it was like the contemporary books that was like mom and dad are just not, like they're like, just like, how was your day? And the kid's like, good. And like there's like 100 things that went on that the other 300 pages of the book, and like parents don't know, and they're like, oh, okay, great, eat your peas. And it's like, which is, I'm sure there are parents like that, and so it's important to represent all different kinds of parents and parental figures. But like I appreciate seeing ones that feel like that portray a different realistic experience. It feels to me a bit more a little more realistic. But actually I have another graphic, another high-tech prop, not that many more, but I think these are it. But when I start to build a character, I don't start out with all the detail. I sort of start out with just like a more generic idea. So for building Dad's character in the Dreamweaver, we have I'm an artist.
You are an artist. Oh my goodness. You can auction those off afterwards.
So I knew that he was sad and irresponsible and like a self-titled big dreamer, and that's how he sort of justifies not not thinking too much ahead about how is he going to support his kids and where are they going to live and where is Zoe going to go to school in the fall and is she going to have to switch schools 2 or 3 times. And then as I went through the first draft, second draft, Dad's character evolves a bit. And so you see he went from a stick figure to wearing real clothes because I'm an artist. And so like, how did he evolve? I layer in more details. Like now he tries to show that he misses Zoe more after he left her. I add in like little details to make him feel like a real person. Like he makes really great coffee and he wears silly t-shirts. I don't know. So like I layer in, just as like a to talk about like writing and writing parents, I layer in little details sort of sometimes at the end just to make the character feel more like a real person to me.
Right, fill them out. Because I think it's easy for the parents in middle grade to end up feeling, kind of two-dimensional, or stick figure, like, especially if they're not a huge part of the plot. So I think depending on whether the relationship between the parent and the child is part of the story, I think that makes a big difference as to how developed the parent character is. So like in my book, Eddie is searching for his kind of identity and his belonging. And so understanding his Colombian father is really important to him. So that's sort of the key to figuring that out. And then also understanding his white side too, and understanding his mom's side. And so that's one of the main kind of themes of the book, is this idea of his identity. And I feel like, so my 13-year-old, I used to read to her every night, and now she's reading to me, which is really fun. So she's reading me, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. And right now, and the parents are play an interesting part in that book that I hadn't remembered from when I was a kid, in that she's kind of searching for her religion, and the parents are these two are Jewish and Christian. And so they drop in to kind of feed that question throughout the whole book. They're not very well developed characters, but they kind of serve their purpose over and over again, as she's kind of trying to figure out like which religion should she be part of. So I think like in the end, it comes back to like, what is your point? Why are you writing this book? I mean, not to put too much pressure, but why are you writing this book? Now write your parents. We have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Let's see, Rebecca. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi.
Do middle grade main characters see the grown-ups' blind spots and then step in to fix them or call them on it?
Such a good question.
That is a good question. I think, I'm just looking over here at my pile of books that I brought out. I think in some ways, for my character, from Eddie, he really calls out his older brother. And the older brother, is in between being an adult and a kid, sort of.
Yeah.
And he definitely sees his brother's blind spots and kind of is trying to fix them. He wants everybody to be perfect, and he's disappointed when they turn out not to be perfect. So I think that that's pretty common. And I think when kids in books realize that their parents have disappointed them in some way, and See You in the Cosmos, it's been about a year since I read this book. I think that there's something weird with the dad, and I won't spoil it, but the boy has been kind of romanticizing the father, and all of a sudden he realizes he's this real person. And so I think that kind of coming of age, the traditional like tragedy where kind of this loss of innocence comes in. And so there is a loss of innocence to realize that your parents are not perfect and that they're making bad choices or whatever. And I think we see that in Zoe for sure towards the end with her dad. Well, and with Poppy too, right? Because she is suddenly realizing like they're not making perfect choices, and she actually maybe knows better, which is a weird place, I think, for a kid to be in. And kind of a hard place to be in.
And also, I think it sort of all depends, like there are some situations where the kids might be right or might have insights to share that are beyond their years, where they're showing like really good wisdom, and they're really being so perceptive about what the adults around them are messing up. But like also they are kids, so there's other situations where like they're wrong, and like parents do still have to correct them, like wearing the life jackets. Like mom was right, wear the life jacket.
Right.
Or like Zoe sneaks off with good intentions in the Dreamweaver to go do something, but Poppy is like, you almost gave me a heart attack. Like, don't do that again. You don't just disappear. You tell me where you are if you're going somewhere.
Yeah, so, there's kind of this line between having an adventure for the story and also like modeling, appropriate behavior and not,
It's true. I feel like that's that way in real life too. Like real life parents are not perfect, and kids will call them on it, like probably very quickly. But like they're still the parents, and they still need to to be the parents. We have another question from Alyssa. Hi, Alyssa. Do you do that for all the characters? Do all your characters change or evolve? So not every character can change that much, like otherwise I think the story would get a little too complicated. But I do like all of the main characters whenever I'm writing a story to evolve in some way for me, because I just think it's more interesting. Otherwise, like if like they were I mean they like all the characters can be likable and great, but like maybe they'll learn something, or they'll modify like some behavior in some way, like they will evolve like a little bit. Like in the Dreamweaver, I'd say her friends probably didn't. Her family members are the ones. Zoe's family members are the ones who showed like the greatest emotional arcs. But there was also like evolution in her friendship with, like in particular, one of the other girls who she didn't hit it off with at all right off the bat. But then they work through their differences and they become friends. They sort of talk it out. So yeah, I like a lot of evolution. Not every single character, because then I think it would get too busy and unfocused. But like the big ones, the major characters, I like to change in some way. Not everyone necessarily the same amount of change, but
Yeah.
some degree.
I mean, I think it's important that all your characters have some kind of arc in some way. So it might be, I mean, like, I won't, and so I was going to give away a major plot point. I won't give away a major plot point. But like the mom in my book, while I said she was pretty even, however, like there is one part of her, she's been hiding her grief for her, or she's been hiding talking about her late husband, and by the end she realizes that that's not really helpful for her son, and so that's not like a huge personality or evolvement, but it is like enough of a change. So basically, like all the characters change and evolve kind of in service of your main character, I think, so that their narrative arc is moving through.
Mm-hmm.
If she hadn't made that change, then that would have changed how Eddie's character arc goes. So I think like everybody has to kind of be working together as they're changing.
I agree. Sorry, I'm just reading the comments.
Yeah, me too. Sorry.
Thank you for participating. Everyone who's in the chat, if you want to chat with us.
Yeah, please feel free to drop a question. Hello. I like the idea of giving the adults an emotional arc too. Yeah, I think that depending on how important they are for the book, like I think that the parents and Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret probably aren't going to change. First of all, I don't remember parents being in that book at all from when I read it as a kid.
I don't remember the grandma.
So I didn't remember the grandma.
There's a grandma.
Yeah, there's a grandma, like a favorite grandma.
It's been a while. I love that book, but it's been a while since I read it.
Yeah. So I think like depending on how important they are to the story, I think that the parents are going to have to change. Yeah, depending.
Joan asked, I was told that MG characters have to take the lead, not the parents, to fix problems. I think that makes sense. You want like an active main character who's the one doing stuff, but they also like they have to interact with their parents to some extent. So if like let's say like you had a plot, I think, where like the kid messed up at school and then the parents like dove in to save them from any punishment or consequences, then like that's now the story. Like how is a kid reacting to that? Are they a spoiled brat who like has to learn to not be so privileged, not have their parents just like fix everything for them? Or like, do you know what I mean? Like they're like the kid should be the one, the main character should be driving the action or reacting to, I don't know. I feel like it's not an exact science. It would sort of depend on what the particular plot is. But yeah, the main character should be active and driving the plot line. But part of that is like there's going to be inherent conflict that's not necessarily caused directly by the main character. Like it might be the parents did something that the kids don't like, and what are they doing now with that?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that one of the reasons maybe that there's such a history of parents being dead usually in children's books is that automatically forces the main character to have the agency for everything. Like, and you don't even have to write it in, right? It's just that's what, if you don't have any, if you're Anne Shirley and Anne of Green Gables, you have to make all those mistakes yourself because you don't have parents to lean back on or to fix things for you. So I think that like from a storytelling point of view, I think that all those older classic literature books like that, I think that's why there's so many missing parents, and it really forces the character. You just can't.
Right.
You can't. No one can write you a note. If your parent is dead.
It's so interesting because you're mentioning these classics, and so it seems like there was an arc in children's literature where it went from like historically, way back a long time ago, you had all these kids with whose parents were deceased, but then in the 80s, there was an article saying, "Oh
Yeah.
no, you need those two parents home eating dinner at 6 p.m." I don't know if that's exactly what the article said, but that just,
Right.
and
Right.
then thankfully, I think now there's like a lot more different representations of family. We still need more of them, but like at least there are a lot more different types of families in middle grade.
And Mary Louise, hello, Mary Louise, she's also a Musa. She said early on that since the setting of my book is in the 1930s, I chose to depict a traditional family. And I think that time period does have a lot to do. I mean,
yeah, the time period matters. Yeah.
All of the Laura Ingalls Wilder books had two parents and the kids. I mean, and that was an important, like that nuclear family was an important part of those books, that story. So I think, I think a lot depends. It seems like the historical settings, it's either that they're an orphan or that they have a traditional family. I could be overly generalizing, but.
I wonder if that's like, I don't know, I'm totally speculating, I don't know, but if it's like, if we're looking really like at the 1800s and 1900s before women were able to work outside the home as much, I wonder if that's part of it. Like,
yeah.
If like, I wonder, I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just wondering, like, in that era, did single parents just remarry much more quickly, just to not do it alone, or for love? I don't know. Did they?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I know I used to read these books that took place and or that were written in the 20s and about these Boy Scouts in the 20s. And they all have traditional, two-parent families and middle-class white families. And they go off and have their adventures, and the moms are stay-at-home moms, and they basically serve to do whatever the kids want, make them lunches to pack, or fix their uniform. Like that's the only role that the mom has, is sort of a servant for her characters. Interesting. So yeah, I think there is some change in what's popular and what's common and what our lifestyles are. Alyssa says, that makes sense. I appreciate the clarification. The main character drives the story, but the main character doesn't exist in a bubble. That's a good summary of that, I think.
That is a great summary.
Thank you. We will use that from now on. The main character still needs to interact with the parents. Right. And I think that is, I said that my editor and agent both kind of pushed back on having Eddie interact with his mom and when he was traveling. And that is like, because that's reality, right? So we have to reflect reality to some extent.
Mm-hmm. Alyssa asked, how long did it take you to write your manuscripts?
Let's see. I wrote like the first draft of the manuscript pretty quickly, like 3 months, I would say. It was just like ready to go. I don't know. It was one of those books that just like came out. And then it was another like year and a half of editing and rewriting, and then another 3 to 6 months working with my agent and then editor. So altogether, it was like 2 years, I guess. But the bulk of like the whole story was pretty quick, which I feel really fortunate, just because the other projects I've done have not been like that at all. So thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Eddie. I'm indebted to him. How about you, Reina?
No, same here. This book was probably a couple months for the first draft, and then a few more months of revisions. But everything else I've ever tried to write, unpublished so far, that has taken years, like years. So I don't know. Maybe that means I should try to write another middle grade book.
That's what I was thinking too. I have a memoir that came out last year, and it took me 10 years between writing the first essays to getting it published. So I'm so grateful this one didn't take that long.
It's true. I mean, it depends also. I think that this is just like our personal experiences, but it also so much depends on everything else, a writer has going on in their life. So like everyone's on their own journey, and writing time can be very hard to find. So.
And I think like right now at the beginning of the pandemic, I couldn't write at all. I was just just my head was not in a space where I could handle it, even though I was at home. It just was like too much emotional energy going towards worrying about the world. And then now that it's been longer, we kind of gotten used to this new weirdness and new normal. I have started writing again, and actually it's felt really good to get back into doing something that feels really normal. So I think, it's so many changes. Let's see, Alyssa has another question. Before querying an agent, did you have more than one middle grade manuscript written? I did not. This one was my first manuscript, but I had written a memoir.
So I actually found my agent through DV Pitt. Yay, DV Pitt! And that was for a YA novel that is not yet published.
Oh,
so
wow,
no, I didn't have an MG book written before
Mary Louise says 15 years for me because I had to learn the craft through how to write books and conferences. That's such a good point, because I think that's why my memoir, first of all, my memoir required me to live a little bit more before I could write the ending. I think that's actually what happened. But a lot of those 10 years were me learning how to write, because I hadn't written, I don't have an MFA, and I wasn't even an English major in college. And so, so it was a lot of just figuring it out, and those how-to and the conferences and the classes and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that the time it takes to write something is up in the air. But Reina, so you had already written a YA novel when you started writing Dreamweaver?
I did, yes.
So it wasn't like that was your first book you ever wrote?
It wasn't my first book, no. And I'd written so actually, if we're going to take a long view, then I have been trying to get published since I was 7 years old. Not at 7, I wasn't querying anybody, didn't even know what that was. But no, I've been trying to write, and sort of for a very, very long time. I would say up until I wrote that YA novel that got me my agent, I would say up until then, before I wrote that book, I was very self-defeating about it, and I would sort of think that I had a lot of doubts, and should I even try? Is this even worth it? And but I just always had this desire to write. It's just I don't know. I remember thinking I wish that I had the same drive to do exercise and eat broccoli I have, right?
In my house.
Other seemingly more productive pursuits that would make me feel so good. Instead, I just want to keep getting rejected. So I don't know if the lesson there is keep trying or.
Well,
I feel go ahead.
It is. I think ultimately it is. I also wanted to write from the very beginning. First books I read as a kid, I wanted to be a writer, and didn't think that was really, ended up feeling like that wasn't a job that you could do, that wasn't a viable option. And so I first started really writing again seriously in my late 20s, and I wrote a chick lit book. So this was in the early 2000s, and I thought I was going to be get a movie deal, and I was terrible. But I did I had the practice of going through and writing a full-length novel and kind of learning along the way. And then the rejections, I always felt like I wish I could just quit, because the rejections were just so awful. But I could, like you said, I felt exactly like you. I just had to keep writing and keep trying. And Ray asked, do you have any tips to get through the submission process? And I think part of it is just trying to develop a thick skin for rejections. Yes. Or tell yourself you have a thick skin. I still feel like every rejection feels terrible.
Yes.
So that's part of it. And then sticking with it is such an important part. And I ended up with my agent and my book deals, because a lot of it had to do with the fact that I had become basically what I call a good literary citizen. So I started volunteering for things locally. I live in Minneapolis, where before it was known as the George Floyd place, it was known as this literary city. So there was a lot of opportunities here in person. And so I got to know just a lot of people, and those people do other people. I went to conferences. I just kind of, and I volunteered to judge things and, you know, just my time. And I feel like just getting to know people and those like personal connections is really helpful. And also it just makes you, well, I hate to say this, but I feel like it just puts good karma out there in the world for you when you're willing to help other people and participate and volunteer and all that kind of things, and just kind of become a well-rounded writer. And because you learn a lot too, I think.
I love that. Yes, I think building community is really, really important. And also a few other tips that I learned through querying submission. When you say submission, Ray, do you mean querying? So typically a writer will query an agent, and then the agent will do the submissions to most big publishers. But sometimes some big publishers will take unagented submissions, and some publishers will always take unagented submissions. So just to, I guess, delve into the language or like the terms to editors. So I think both in getting an agent and then when you're on sub with an agent, like Anika said, a thick skin is so important. But also, and this is actually hard for me to do because I get writer's block, boo. But like moving on to another project, because I think I did get hung up for very long periods of wasted time, or not wasted, because everything is all about growth and learning and, you know, getting to where you need to go. But like I have definitely historically gotten like a little bit precious about a particular project that I just really love, I really poured my heart into. And I mean, it may be meant to be, it may not be meant to be, it may not be meant to be now, it may be meant to be later, it may need to be updated, like when you can step away and come back in 6 months. So like working on something else while querying or while on sub to editors, I think is a helpful, like at least distraction, because then at least you feel like I just love the process of writing. Like when I am over the writer's block and actually have time to write and I'm into it, then it's like the best feeling sometimes. You know, like when you're like in the middle of something, a juicy new story or a character who you just love, then that's like, it's like fun and satisfying just in itself. But then also it feels like another like iron, what's that phrase? Iron in the fire, like another chance, you know, like you'll have another chance to, like, if this one doesn't pan out, then, you know, on to the next one.
Yeah. And when I was on sub, I don't let my agent tell me every time someone rejects. I'm like, no, I do not want to know. Do not tell me who is saying no. So she'll just like wait until the end. And then she'll like pick a few different phrases like, well, these people said these are the little comments that make us think we should like reframe the submission, or maybe this isn't worth reframing it or whatever. So because I just don't need to be aware of all the people saying no to my project that I love. So,
that's a good tip.
That's the best thing I can do. I wish I could do that, like with all kinds of, like if you're submitting essays or something. I wish I could do that. I wish my agent did that too.
I couldn't quite hear you, but I think you said you wish that you could have like a filter for any and all disappointment. Like yeah, that would be good.
I was just selling my house, and we would get these no's from people who were getting, you know, looking at our house, and it was just like, I just felt exactly like trying to get a book published. And so, why don't you like my house?
It's not about you. It might just be.
I know.
Who knows what else is going on in their lives?
Exactly. It's
at least that's what I tell myself on every rejection.
Yeah. Good luck to you, Ray.
Yes, we can. I can't wait to see your book one day.
We're at an hour and 10 minutes, so if there are other questions, we can keep going. Otherwise, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Okay. Actually, we're an hour and 8 minutes, according to the clock there.
Any other questions?
It's been super great to have so many people chiming in with questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for participating. It was really exciting to be able to chat with you. Great picture books. Are there any books or resources you recommend? Alyssa asked, I write picture books, and in a year or two, I want to write an MG. Are there any books or resources you recommend? So my best recommendation is to read MGs that are popular now, just to get a sense of like what's been selling recently. Not just like the bestsellers, but also the ones that just seem to be, successful or well regarded, and to just sort of get into that storytelling world. It's a different style. I mean, every writer has their own style. MG is a different audience and a different style, of course, definitely than picture books, but even than young adult. So just to sort of like be in that world. And then actually another tip that I had both on query subs writing books, keep comps in mind. Like which books are you going to compare to? And there, again, some advice I had read when I was querying, but that I think is also relevant for subs, when you have an agent, and like good to brainstorm with agent, like what books that have like a solid record and that would be taken seriously. So like not like, I think everyone, I don't even know, I shouldn't speak because I don't know vampires, but like I like maybe not necessarily just a book as big as Twilight, or though maybe Twilight is a good comp, I don't know, but like successful books that are really, really successful, but also just like other, not necessarily like as household name books, but books that are well respected in the industry and that seem to be selling well to also use as comps.
Yeah. When I was working on What If a Fish, I had fallen in love with Rainy Nightingale by Katie Camillo. And I took that book and just like used it as my textbook kind of. I went through page by page and figured out, okay, this is how far into the book that we meet this secondary character. This is when the inciting incident happens. This is, and kind of just like I put Post-its and wrote in it and just went through and summarized every chapter so I could figure out like how is that arc working. So just find a book that I recommend finding a book you really, really connect with and really love, and then just study like how did that author do that? Like what is going on behind the scenes that you don't think about when you're reading it the first time.
I think that's great advice.
There will be a recording, we think. If everything went well, there's going to be a recording and it will be up on YouTube in the next couple of days. And then on our website, we'll have a link on our website.
Thank you so much, Alyssa, Joan, Rebecca, Ray, everybody. Am I missing anyone? Hilda, thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Louise, thank you. Thank you. Joan, thank you. Kim, thank you.
So you can find us on musasbooks.com and see your book.
Yes.
What If a Fish comes out in August, and Dreamweaver almost is ready.
Yes, the Dreamweaver is any day now. I know, it's like being pregnant, like the baby's due any day now.
Wow.
The pub date is June 23rd for my book baby.
So soon. Oh my goodness.
Very soon. It's up on NetGalley. It's up on Edelweiss. It's available. It can be requested at local libraries, please, or available for pre-order. Where most books are sold.
Write something nice on Edelweiss or on NetGalley because somebody didn't write something nice.
It makes authors really excited and happy. No pressure.
Yeah. I hope this was helpful, and feel free to reach out. I'm at Anika Writer on Twitter, so feel free to say hi.
Thanks. And I'm sorry, awkward. I was awkward. Sorry. And I'm at Reina Luz Alegre on Twitter, and that's also my website, reinaluzalegre.com. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anika.
Thank you, Reina.
I don't know what to do now.
We're going to go off air. So thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Bye.